that you have sympathetic activation, which causes vasoconstriction. You have angiotensin II being produced that causes vasoconstriction. It's not a surprise that her extremities are cold. She's vasoconstricting. Why is she clammy? You might remember this from AP1. The sympathetic nervous system activates sweat glands. So she's cold and clammy.
So the reason that the blood's not reaching her extremities is because it's being shunted to more important
The vital organs, and then we're activating the renin-angiotensin system and the sympathetic nervous system, all of which causes peripheral vasoconstriction. Okay, why? We're trying to shunt blood centrally.
Okay.
We're trying to maintain life. That systemic, if we raise systemic vascular resistance by causing peripheral vasoconstriction, hopefully we can raise blood pressure. Now the problem with that is, as you raise blood pressure, it increases the afterload against which the heart has to pump blood. So she's probably gone into a little bit of heart failure, which is now being made worse. In fact, despite all of our efforts to resuscitate her, her blood pressure begins to plunge even more. Why do you think that is? In fact, we put a Swan-Ganz catheter and we find out that her SVR is beginning to fall. Despite the fact that she's got activation of the sympathetic nervous system, she's got angiotensin II, we're giving her vasopressors. Why do you think her blood pressure falls? This has to do with local metabolic factors. When tissue becomes ischemic, okay, it starts releasing more lactic acid. The pH in and around that tissue falls. Okay, the tissue becomes hypoxic. The PO2 drops. CO2 continues to climb because they have any blood flow to clear it. And so, do you remember that these are factors that promote vasodilation? Remember we did that little experiment in class, post-ischemic reperfusion? It just showed you the effects of these metabolites building up. Well, if her tissue's not receiving any blood flow, it would be equivalent to putting tourniquets there. And so the peripheral blood vessels are doing this. They're dilating. And so despite our efforts, over time, what's going to happen is SVR is going to begin to fall. That's a bad sign.
Because the blood's no longer being only used for the important organ.
Well, the bad sign is that her blood pressure is going to keep dropping further. Okay? And ultimately she's going to code. Okay? And she's going to die. All right.
And this is why I don't have a choice, right?
And that's the whole story. Okay?
I'm sorry about that.
A lovely person. You know how in the funeral I always speak about the person in retrospect as if great person, lovely person. Not a bad tabs, let me say this. She had some problems, but she wasn't a bad person. Just had some problems, some issues. Okay? So, in the end, here's what I'm going to tell you. In order to really be of use in a hospital setting, you gotta know stuff. You have to know stuff. And that, I was shocked when I came here and started teaching, and I found out about the nursing curriculum. Yeah. Well, I tell you about how LSU's ramping up their nursing curriculum. We're kind of ramping it down. That doesn't mean we don't graduate some really good students, but those really good students are learning on their own. Okay? And in order to be helpful in a hospital environment, you have to learn. When they started doing these conferences, these kind of joint conferences where they brought in doctors and nurses and tried to expedite patient care in order for the hospital to make money, really. One of my friends told me, he said, listen, he says, I quit going to those. He says, it's a waste of my time. He said, when you bring up issues with regard to patient care and you talk about drugs, the nurses don't understand the pharmacology. They don't have the background to be able to talk the talk. He said, so what I find I was doing is just going to these conferences and then just teaching everybody.
Even before you go to school, for the still come and sit in the pharmacy class?
Oh, yeah. Just don't tell anybody. You have to do it on the down low.
Right. It's like,
Right.
I'm just curious, so like what would they have done to prevent her blood pressure from continuing to rise?
Well,
What would you do in that?
They would have given her a positive inotropic agent.
Okay.
Like, are you familiar with income pharmacology? Okay. It would give her, you know how the heart has beta-1 receptors?
Right.
They would have given her a beta-1 agonist that would have stimulated those receptors. Now, it would have increased her heart rate, but the more important thing is it would have caused the increased force of contraction. So they're trying to pick up her cardiac output. Of course, the risk you take is that could exacerbate the infarction because you're also increasing oxygen demand. They may have given her volume gently if she wasn't in pulmonary edema. If as a result of the cardiac dysfunction, using congestive heart failure and pulmonary edema, then they couldn't have given her volume.
Well, so if they gave her a beta-1 agonist, couldn't they just like put her on more oxygen? So give her more oxygen to use? Or no?
Oh yeah, they would probably give her oxygen as soon as she came in.
Right.
Okay. Although the truth is the oxygen wasn't really the problem. At a PO2 of 80, you still have good saturation. But they would have done that anyway. Again, the problem with giving peripheral vasoconstrictors is in this situation, she's already clamped down. You're probably not going to do much. So this is a tough situation to deal with because a lot of times, no matter what you do, the patient doesn't make it. You know, now but the main therapy is, now the other thing you could do is give what they call low-dose dopamine. Dopamine is a medication that increases blood flow to the kidneys. Turns out the kidneys, the renal arteries have what are called dopaminergic receptors. And so you give dopamine, you stimulate those receptors, it increases blood flow to the kidneys, simply to help preserve the kidneys. Okay. But it also, dopamine also has an effect to cause a little bit of peripheral vasoconstriction. So sometimes you see dopamine being used only because they want to try to preserve the kidneys. If the kidneys go without blood flow for 24 hours, you're going to see the B1 and creatinine start to climb. The patient's going to start developing ischemic kidney problems. But you can see how what we're studying now is going to influence clinical problems. It's going to have to do a lot to do with the clinical problems you're going to see in the future. All right. Let me talk about somebody who comes in with uncontrolled diabetes.
You can use my name.
What's your dad's name?
JR.
JR. I like that name, JR Hunter. JR Hunter.
JR.
Yeah, Will's right. By the way, what's Matt's last name? I'm just trying to think about that. Are y'all related?
No.
Okay.
That'd be so weird.
Yeah.
We wouldn't be dating.
That's not your brother or anything?
No.
Okay. You come from Lafitte, don't you?
Yeah. Wait, what?
Are you from Lafitte?
No. My family's from, my dad's family's from Gretna.
Yeah.
Well, she's dating a guy named. No, a lot of us do.
Wait.
I dated a guy in high school that his grandfather and my grandfather both had the same first name and last name. And
Wow.
so everybody thought like our grandfathers were, the same person. But mine was dead and his was still alive.
Yeah, my family's from, my dad's side's from Gretna. Like, even though it's Nova Scotia, it's like,
Okay.
it would be way down the line.
I'd say it's interesting y'all have the same last name.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting too.
Well, you wouldn't have to change your last name when you get married.
Yeah.
That'll cut out a lot of things.
Yeah, it'll make it easier. Marriage material. Really? He's studying theology.
Yeah.
What is he going to do?
He wants to do a lot of things, but I think with his degree, he's going to be a professor in high school. He wants to go to Jesuit. That's like his dream school.
It's a little too late. Oh, you mean teach at Jesuit?
Teach.
Okay.
He wants to go there.
He's going to go from Holy Cross to
Yeah.
Jesuit. That's kind of stuff down. All right, so let's say that JR hasn't been following his diet. Okay. He's been busy in work. You know, he's been working too much, getting run down. Okay. Stressed. You know, stress activates release of ACTH. Remember the carbon trophic hormone? Oh, we haven't covered that yet. And so you produce more cortisol, which is glucogenic. It raises glucose levels. So he hasn't been following a diet. A couple of times he's missed his, does he take insulin?
Yeah. He takes a shot of insulin.
All right, no, so he hasn't taken his insulin as regularly, he's missed a few doses. And the next thing you know, he's feeling pretty puny. He notices that he's been peeing a lot. Notices he's been peeing a lot, and he's trying to drink a lot. And the rest of the family notices that he's been losing a little weight. And then finally, one day he goes to get out of bed, and he passes out, just briefly. He stands up again, and he's just feeling dizzy, lightheaded. And finally, your mom, Charlene says, okay, JR, you're not going to work today. Yeah, we're going to Oshner, but we're going to the ER. Okay. Now, in the ER, what they find is that his diabetes, he hasn't had anything to eat that day, and yet his sugar, this would be therefore a fasting sugar, is 120 milligrams per deciliter. Not well controlled. Okay. And on physical exam, his mucous membranes are kind of dry. His neck vein is relatively flat. Okay. It turns out when they examine him, that it looks like he's got a little viral syndrome. You know, he hasn't been talking about. His throat's a little bit sore. He's got a little bit of lymphocytosis. You know, there's a couple of things going on. Not that he's going to require hospitalization, but we're a little concerned about it. Now, based on the clinical findings that we've discussed, labs are drawn. What would you anticipate? Let's say anticipate. What would you anticipate with respect to serum chemistries? What serum chemistries might be abnormal?
We're talking about urine too?
Well, we'll get to urine, but let's talk first about the serum.
Is that like glucose or something?
Well, we already told you his glucose is high, so that one, you can't use that. I hate when I give somebody that, and I'll say they have hyperglycemia, I said, what serum abnormalities might you expect, and they'll put elevated glucose. Well, I gave you that already. Give me something I didn't give you. What do you know about him from physical exam? With the little bit we know.
Well, it sounds like he's dehydrated.
That's it! Thank you. Thank you. So what does that mean in terms of his serum studies? What would we expect? All right, electrolytes. Let's go electrolytes.
Yeah. They're going to be low.
Serum sodium.
It's going to be high.
Yes, because it's sodium concentration.
Yeah.
So if you have the same amount of sodium, which is your major electrolyte, dissolved in less water, then it's going to tend to elevate its concentration. So you might see that his serum sodium is a little bit high because he's dehydrated. You see how we play this game?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the truth is, nobody is going to measure his ADH level in the ER. Number one is, it would take too long to come back. That would take like 2 or 3 days to come back and do something like that. You'd have to send it to a reference lab. And they'd charge like $1,000 to do that. We don't need to do it. We already know. What is this ADH? It's high. If someone, the two most important stimuli for ADH release are going to be osmolarity, so increased osmolarity, which we know is high because of sodium, and we know he's volume depleted, that's the second one, vascular volume. So those are both stimuli that are causing release of ADH. So his ADH level is going to be high, even though we're not going to send it off. We know that. We're good that way. Okay.
Peeing a lot. He's just peeing out all of his.
Yeah, he was peeing a lot. He had polyuria,
Whatever he's
polydipsia.
obtaining, he's just peeing it out.
That's one of
It's just moving right through him.
Right? Yeah. Whatever he's obtaining, he's just being
He's not holding on to it.
Sometimes they keep
So-
taking it.
So, yeah, the the glucose is acting like an osmotic diuretic. In other words, it's holding on, when it gets filtered, as the level is high, it's holding on to water. You know, let's look at let's say we're going around here. Let's say we're distal convoluted tubule and collecting duct. Let's say that our glucose level is really high. Now, I'm going to give you a situation where glucose is really high and it's not being completely reabsorbed. So all that glucose reaching the DCT and distal convoluted tubule, instead of having an osmolarity of 100 here, okay, it might be, let's say, 300 here. Okay, it's higher than normal. Okay, so even if the osmolarity in the interstitium is 300, okay, you're not going to have any osmotic force that's pulling water out of the collecting duct, because at this point here, the osmolarity is equal, equivalent. Now, as you go down the collecting duct, you may see a difference because of that gradient, 400, 600, 900, 1200. Okay, so eventually you will start to pull fluid out of the filtrate, but not near as much as you would pull out if the osmolarity within the filtrate wasn't as high. Does that make sense? Okay, so for that reason, whenever you have high glucose levels, or it can act as an osmolar diuretic and just hold on to water. So let's look. JR got a urinalysis done. So let's look at some of these things here that we can test for. Specific gravity. Specific gravity is a measure. I don't want to use specific gravity because that could be a little bit tricky here. Glucose. Is this glucose level going to be high? Is he going to have glucosuria?
Yeah.
How many people think he's going to have glucosuria? Okay. The answer is no. Well, it's true his glucose level is high. But
Well,
He
if
was-
I thought you said it wasn't being reabsorbed. Yeah.
what's that?
If it's not being reabsorbed, then it could not.
Well, when I drew this example here, I said, let's make it real.